everybody, welcome back. This is Allison. Today we're going to make a fun shaker card using a shape for the window. Now I made this card several weeks ago and this is part of the Waffle Flower June release. This is the stacking box die and I'm going to use this die to cut a hole in this panel, and this is going to be the window for the shaker. So I'm using my T-square ruler to make sure it's straight because this is going to be the final panel that goes on the top of my card. So I want it to be nice and straight. And so there's the panel with the hole and the little stack of presents on the side. I can use that for another card, so I will save that. And these little dies from the set are for the lids for the presents. And I'm going to use these dies to help me separate the presents, and that will enable me to have shaker bits in each separate present. So now what I'm going to do is take another panel of white cardstock and I'm going to place it right next to the other one. And I'm using my T-square ruler to make sure everything's even, and I'm going to make marks on that second panel right where the presents meet each other. So I'm going to put 2 marks on that paper. And this is going to help me determine where to place my 3 colors, because remember I said I want each present to be a different color. And this is the panel that's going to go in the back of the shaker window. So this is what you'll see through the actual window. For my ink blending, I'm using Pinkfresh inks, and the green is Fresh Pear, the blue is Sky Blue, and the purple is Soft Lilac. And I'm not really worried about getting a perfect blend, and I'm definitely not worried about where the colors meet each other, because again, the lids for the presents are going to cover those areas. So now I have a piece of acetate for the shaker window, and I'm going to use Scor-Tape on the back of this panel to adhere that acetate. I know that some people use glue. I personally always use Scor-Tape with acetate. I don't know, it seems like glue takes so long to dry, and sometimes I worry about the glue squeezing out and getting on the acetate, so that's why I use Scor-Tape. So I'm securing that acetate, and now I have cut those lid boxes, or the lids to the boxes, out of white cardstock, and I'm just going to place those white pieces on the top of the acetate. Now we're on the front of the card, and again I'm going to use Scor-Tape to adhere those onto the acetate. And eventually I will come in with colored lids, but this is just going to help me build a little bit of dimension, just so the colored lids aren't so flat against the card. So for that top lid, I came in with some thinner Scor-Tape. Most of the Scor-Tape I was using was 1/4 inch, and I think that smaller one was 1/8 of an inch. So now that I have all of that done, now you can see how the 3 colors show through. Now I'm going to use foam tape, and this foam tape from Simon Says Stamp is pretty thick. So I'm just going to use 1 layer for my shaker card. Typically when you have thinner foam tape, you need to use 2 layers of foam tape, and that all depends on what you use for your shaker bits. What I'm using today, they're not very big shaker bits, so using 1 layer of this foam tape is perfectly fine. So here I'm just going around all the boxes, and you can see I already enclosed that big bottom present, and now I'm just kind of filling in around the card, because this whole panel is going to pop up on my card base, so I want it to be even. I don't want any low points when I place it on the card base. So for the smaller one, the smaller presents up top, I'm going to cut the width and then I'm going to make it thinner just so it fits where that smaller lid is going to go. So again, I'm making sure that the foam tape, that they all meet each other so there aren't any holes for any shaker bits to escape. Having said that, I'm going to show you in a minute what happened. You can't see it right now because it looks like all of my foam tape is meeting up and that there aren't any holes. Right now I am taking in an anti-static powder tool and I'm just brushing it along the sides of that foam tape so that none of the shaker bits will stick. So these shaker bits are called Tinsel Tangle from Trinity Stamps, and I'm just going to try to carefully shake it in here. You'll see, oops, big explosion in that second present. I did not mean to pour that much, so you'll see. I'll try to clean some of this up. This is very tiny little shaker bits. I cannot tell you where I got these. Sometimes Trinity Stamps will include little things like this in their packages. I don't see it on their website. But right now you'll see me putting in some shaker bits that I put in almost all of my shakers, and that's Pretty Pink Posh 4mm sequins. And I'm choosing the colors that match up with the ink colors that I used. And I'm using my Nuvo little craft spoon to place those in. And now what I'm going to do is pull off all the release tape. And some of that little tiny sparkly stuff is going to kind of get on some of the tape. It's okay. I have plenty of tape to secure my back panel with. But you're going to see in a minute when I pull off this strip right here that while it looked like my foam tape was matching up, especially when that release tape was on, it was not completely matching up to the foam tape below it. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see this right here. Do you see that teeny tiny little hole? And I didn't notice it when I was making it. But later on I discovered there was a slight tiny bit of leakage. I was able to just stuff a tiny little piece of foam tape underneath when I discovered it later, so it's okay. I was able to save it, but you do need to be very careful, especially when you use really tiny little shaker bits, that you don't have any holes, because sometimes tinsel happens. All right, so there I placed my back panel on, and now you can see the colors through the holes. And now I'm going to place the colored lids on, like I had mentioned before. And I'm just using liquid glue to do this. And now you can see it all coming together. You can see the 3 separate presents. And now I'm going to place these bows. These bows are also part of this same die set. So everything you see right here is all from that one die set from Waffle Flower. And this was, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, this was part of the amazing June release from Waffle Flower. And I had promised at the beginning of the month that I would make some videos, and so it's taken me a while, but here I am with this one. So I'm just going to glue these bows on. And I love how everything is looking right now. So now I'm going to take that shaker panel, and with some liquid glue, I'm just going to adhere it to a light gray A2 card base. And I love how you can see the gray margin around the panel. And finally, we're onto the sentiment. So these little sentiments come from the Subsentiments birthday die cut. Waffle Flower has come up with a lot of these little die cut sets. And so right now I'm just kind of auditioning sentiments and trying to figure out what I want to do. And ultimately I decided to just use that one sentiment. So I'm going to glue it on with liquid glue, and then I am going to come in with my T-square ruler to make sure it's on there straight. And I wanted you to be able to hear the fun shaker in action. So here is the final card and a little bit of a close-up here. I love how it turned out, and I think it's so fun to use a shape for a shaker card. I know a lot of us use circles or squares or rectangles to make our shaker windows. So look around your stash for different shapes and think of how you can use those for fun shakers. This is part 1 of my shaped shaker videos. I will have another one tomorrow using a different type of shape. I thank you for joining me for this one, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.